Hello, everyone. Ladislas Maurice of The Wandering Investor, and today we shall be discussing a very interesting topic, or rather a very little known topic, which is Guyana. So, Guyana is a country in South America which has been booming for the past few years following massive oil discoveries. I mean, their GDP growth was 62% in 2022, 33% in 2023, 46% in 2024, and it's expected to be between 10 and 15% in 2025. So true boomtown. And Cody and Austin, that I've been following for a while, they run the Adventure Capitalist podcast. They've been spending a lot of time on the ground, and we'll be discussing some of the learnings that they've accumulated over the time they've spent there. Cody, Austin, how are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having
Great.
us on.
Thanks for having us.
Cool. So, look, when did you start thinking about Guyana? Why did you start thinking about Guyana? And what was your process to get there?
So I first started writing about Guyana in 2019, and just like you, I'm always looking for opportunities in bizarre countries and weird situations and things that most people are not paying attention to. And I wrote about Guyana in 2019 because there was this large offshore oil discovery, and I basically said, "Hey, this country is going to boom." And I was right. This is one of those things when you write about something, you want to brag about it. So I'm going to brag about it. In 2019, I said it was going to boom, and now here we are, and it's booming big time. Obviously, COVID happened in between or just after 2019, so the logistics to get there were a little bit difficult. But I organized a trip down there last year, and Austin and I went with some other adventurous souls, and we organized a trip where we met with the U.S. Embassy, we met with the Guyanese government, we met with ExxonMobil, who's the major oil player down there, and we just really shook some trees and wanted to see what would fall out. And we discovered a lot. I mean, we verified a lot of the things that were being said in the news. We also understood a lot of what was going on the ground, which is clearly not what's talked about in the news. And then Austin and I explored even deeper into the country to find out more opportunities that no one's even thinking about. So that's kind of the basis of what interested me was this initial oil boom and now where it's at now. And then Austin and our trip, multiple trips down there to actually see what's going on.
I'll share just a little bit. One little extra thing is I went down there to meet with Cody, and I kind of went down with this idea of exploring, import, export, and oil and gas industry. But very quickly, as we spent time on the ground, the realization was, well, the ship has kind of sailed a little bit on the oil and gas, and we got more excited about other opportunities in different areas that were kind of second order consequences of the massive boom that has come to Guyana.
Yeah, because the GDP growth figures I shared are relative in the sense that they are from an extremely low base. I mean, Guyana was a poor country and now it's not poor anymore. But in terms of absolute value, we're looking at the world's 17th proven oil reserves and the third in Latin America. And I think the numbers are about 75% of the proven reserves of Brazil, which itself is a massive producer, and but concentrated amongst only 800,000 people. So,
Yeah, and we could go over statistics forever, but the easy way to think about it for a listener who's looking at interesting markets to go invest in, if, and this is the big if, no one knows if this is going to happen, but if they're able to extract all the oil and it's supposed to be reinvested back in the country and all the stuff goes correctly, Guyana as a nation will probably be twice as wealthy as the wealthiest nations in the Middle East right now per capita. So, again, who knows what's going to happen in the long term? But the point is, the amount of money that's going to flood into this country with 800,000 people is mind-boggling, and how that's actually going to, materialize into their future success is up for debate. But I guess that's what's happening right now, and why people should get down there and check it out.
yeah, because I've come across countries pre-boom and then the boom happens, but it's not necessarily easy to play. Predicting the boom is easy, but actually playing it is a lot harder. So sometimes you have a local stock market with a few illiquid stocks that become slightly more liquid. Usually the best way is to play real estate early on, but then at some point real estate just becomes very expensive. So how do you play Guyana? Or how should you have played Guyana had you arrived early on? So what are the lessons from if we had been there in 2020 and we were investing, and what would be the play now? Because they're probably two different stories.
Cody, why don't you start and talk about kind of the early what you would have played, and then I can go in and talk
Yeah.
about maybe where we're at now.
So I've done real estate all over the world, just like you, Laszlo. So that would be my go-to. If I had, gone down in 2019 when I first started writing about it, I would have just, I call it buying real estate in the path of progress. It's like the most caveman knuckle dragging investment strategy ever, which is just, hey, there's some buildings over here. Let's buy some land next to the buildings that are being built. And like eventually there's going to be this sprawl of urban development and you'll just gain from that. Um, Clearly that ship has sailed, especially in Georgetown, which is the capital of Guyana. I still think the opportunity exists in other smaller towns, but again, remember the entire country is 800,000 people, and the vast majority of those people are in Georgetown. So you could go buy real estate in a small town in another part of the country, but we're talking like these are tiny, tiny towns. Um,
Yeah, good luck
so
with property management.
yeah, totally. And this is like when we talk about wild, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but the wild factor here is off the charts. It's some of the most unexplored jungle in the world. So yeah, property management is you're more worried about jaguars than you are like actual people. But fast forwarding to now, one sector that really interests Austin and I is the tourism sector, and I think that's an obvious one in the sense that oh, this is wild, it's beautiful, there's nature, there's animals, and all that stuff, and you would think that somebody's already doing it, and there are a couple local operators down there. In fact, one operator we've become very close with, but relative to the boom that's going on there and the natural beauty they have, it's essentially completely undeveloped, which is this tourism sector. And remember, Guyana is an English-speaking country, the only English-speaking country in Latin America or in South America. I think Belize is the other one in Latin America. It's a direct flight from the U.S. There's direct flights from Texas and from Florida. I think JFK and also Toronto, and it's very accessible. So when you think of wild nature, I typically think of Africa. I think of a safari and this 20-hour flight from the US to get there. This is a direct flight down with like truly, truly wild nature.
So when countries go through booms like this, typically one of the main issues is supply, and supply of labor. So we're talking of a small country with, literally billions just flowing in. There's probably a lot of construction going on. Things have probably gotten pretty expensive. I haven't been there, I don't know, but just when I hear, the about the country, I assume things are outrageously expensive because it's just that part of the cycle. So, does it make sense to go and try to cater to international tourism when just next door in Brazil, especially after a devaluation, it's probably half the cost of building, if not even less, for
I
similar
think,
nature?
yeah, I think going into like the tourism side of things and looking at what's possible down there, you bring up an interesting point, right? Which is it is expensive down there, and that's one of the limiting factors when you think about how wild it is, right? We're talking about jungle that still has uh, undiscovered, uncontacted tribes, right? And it's very, very close to within 2 hours. The only way to get into the jungle is through small plains, right? There's very little. There's not even roads built, so that leads to the cost being very, very high. Where there's exciting, what's interesting though is there's a lot of expats that are down there currently that are making a lot of money, don't have a lot to do, and the reality is if you can create something for those people that are there, they can go in, explore the country. And I think there's a market that's tapped for the people that are already down there, which is one interesting side of it. And the other part of it that I think is very interesting and something we discovered is that when you start talking to the people in the government all the way up to the president, especially the president, actually, we spent multiple hours with the president talking about this. His vision is to make it as easy as possible for tourism to boom in the country. So that means you talk about labor pools and some of the challenges. It's a very small country, very few people there, a lot of unskilled workers. their view as a government, they kind of take almost a policy of like almost like don't ask, don't tell. Like you can bring in the people that you need to get stuff done in the country if you want to. If you need to bring in skilled workers, construction, there's a lot of Chinese companies that are coming in and bringing all their workers to go work in building construction there. So they have this policy of allowing people to come in and bring in the people that they need to get the job done. So, back to your point about does it make sense to focus on international tourism? I think the what we've discovered there is it is very expensive. There's a market though of people who are there already because they're working in oil and gas. It's easy to get to. That's one huge factor. The fact that it's English speaking is also another huge bonus for the long term success of international tourism. And and yeah, maybe the market initially is going to be expats, but it will grow from there.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
one quick statistic I'll throw out there. The Guyanese government held a job fair in New York because that's the largest diaspora of Guyanese citizens have moved to the US. And the Guyanese government is trying to get 100,000 Guyanese to move back to Guyana because of this labor shortage that you're alluding to, Maurice or Laszlos. Um, so the situation of there being a lack of labor is real. It's totally real. The flip side, though, as Austin alluded to, is that there's these expats there, a lot of oil workers, and they're making a lot of money. These guys are making a ton of money. And there's really only a couple restaurants in Georgetown that are catering to this clientele. And that's where you're going to find cocktails for $15, $20 or more. And that exists, but I don't want to say like the entire country is outrageously expensive because if you went to the local bar or somewhere down the road, you're going to find stuff that's very cheap.
I saw this firsthand. I agree. The initial target market should absolutely be the local expats. In Ghana, for example, during the oil boom, there were all these expats in Western Ghana that had very little to do, and they were making a ton of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And apart from, chasing girls, there really wasn't much to do. And if they were with their families, there was even less to do. So there were a few entrepreneurs that created some resorts, nice resorts along the water that were, just Western standard. They did need to be fantastic. They just needed to be Western, just like non-ghetto essentially. And they were charging ridiculous prices, and they were booked out every single weekend with expat families and just expats bringing their latest girl with them. And that that was
Yeah,
just a
I mean, think
very
about it. You're
healthy
you're an
market.
oil guy making a couple $100,000 a year, and you're living in Guyana. All your housing is taken care of, your food, your transportation. You're getting paid this money that you can't even spend. So if you have your family down there, if you're single, what are you going to do on the weekend?
Yeah.
You're not going to go back to the US for a day. You're going to go, let's go do something fun. Let's go to a resort. Let's book a charter an airplane in the middle of the country. And that's the opportunity that Austin and I see. And one thing, just to jump right into it, that's specifically amazing about the country is they have the largest single drop waterfall in the world. It's called Kaituur Falls. And Austin and I went there, and I'm not like a waterfall connoisseur or anything, but when you get there, it's one of those experiences where you're like, holy shit, this is otherworldly. I feel like I'm in Jurassic Park combined with Avatar. I mean, I was terrified to go up to like the edge of the waterfall. I don't know what the drop is, Austin. You can correct me, but I was terrified to get near that cliff. It's
I think
so
it's almost
massive.
700 feet or something, around 700 feet.
Yeah, so it's one of those nature experiences where it's not just, random jungle. It truly is incredible.
Cool. So essentially, you're looking at services, so tourism, restaurants. So it's really for people who want to move there and get their hands dirty and can deal with operations in an emerging market with a tight labor market. And it's probably just tough to manage people in an environment like this where the labor market's super tight, the salaries are increasing. There are a lot of job offers, not many candidates, a history of people not having the same work ethic as in New York is probably a very tough environment from an operational point of view.
Yes and no. I would push back on the traditional boomtown a little bit because I've been in other situations like this in other Latin American countries. First of all, the language barrier is it's really a game changer. I speak Spanish pretty well, but just having that English baseline, anybody listening to this obviously speaks English, so it makes it much easier. But the other thing that's really different is there is so much money coming into the country, into the government. They're looking to write checks for, I mean, it's one of those situations, there's so many opportunities you can get distracted by how many things there are. And so I would say other boom towns, it's more fractionalized, meaning the money's funneling only into one area. Guyana, the government there has specifically prioritized a lot of infrastructure and social welfare type projects. Not welfare in the sense that they're trying to, make welfare society, but in the sense that they're investing in hospitals and education and transportation and all these like things we take for granted in the West. And so I think a lot of other boom towns maybe skipped over that. I'm not saying Guyana is going to pull it off perfectly. I hope they do, but I think right now is the time to go down there, check it out, and see if there's opportunity for you.
Are you in the States right now, or are you in the States where you're not in Guyana?
That's a whole other story. Well, I'll tell it real quick. I've been around the world, invested all over the place, and I know America's the best place. I'm more patriotic than the average person, especially knowing how the rest of the world works. That the U.S. is the healthiest horse in the glue factory, as I like to say.
I'll also touch on a couple other ideas that we kind of took away from that. I think you look at places like road building, bridge building, these are all big, big, big ideas. But when you fly over the country, and we're in a small plane flying over the jungle for hours, and you look down and you realize you're like, you take for granted in the US how much the infrastructure allows you to connect into the beautiful natural parks in the US, all these incredible experiences that you can go drive to. You can't do any of that in Guyana, even though what they've got on the ground is spectacular. It's like you're at the waterfall. It's like you're visiting Yosemite 180 years ago, right? That's the type of feeling that you have. And it's very clear as you fly over the country and you talk to the people in the government, like they are going to be building the roads, they're going to be doing these things, and someone's got to be involved with it. These are big, big scale projects, but it's. We also talked with an aviation company down there that they're like, this is the most obvious play is we're going to be able to set up private air transit to all different parts of the country. And so there's lots of different ways to go about it. I think to your point about why we're not down there currently in this moment is similar to other countries. The challenge that you deal with down there is that things move slow. Things move slow, and there's bottlenecks. The bottlenecks and the slow moving is also an opportunity. It's you have to be in with the right people to have things move correctly and move fast, move in a rapid pace. But I have no doubt that it's going to continue to grow and boom. And our journeys back and forth. We were down there 3 times in like 3 months, and yeah, it's very fascinating place. Fascinating place.
Yeah, I mean, look, markets like this, trying to play just financially hard, you just need to go there, get your hands dirty. And like if you're sitting somewhere in Europe, for example, and you see things are just decaying in Europe or in Canada, and you want to leave, but you don't have any online income, you're not too sure how to go about it, but you have actual skills like in like restaurant or whatever, this is probably a place where you could just go and, start a good French restaurant, start a French bakery, start a German bakery. And the price elasticity is pretty low when it comes to all these expats. So you probably have like a few thousand expats or more, like you said, earning hundreds of thousands of dollars. They have too much money to deal with. And if you offer good services, they'll go over it. Maybe it's just literally just going there and opening a paddle court, indoor soccer space, a basket, like anything, like a children's playground with things and like literally anything that you start now will probably work because there
One
is nothing in a market like this, and there are literally billions of dollars flowing in.
One very clear opportunity that we just discovered from going down there multiple times, it's almost all the flights leave late at night. So when you're leaving Guyana, they leave late at night. They also arrive typically at night. But you check out of the hotel early in the day. And they have been investing massively in these business conferences. So their people, travelers are coming in from all over doing business. Tens of thousands of people are visiting. I think maybe hundreds of thousands of people are visiting. They've really invested in their airlines and they're trying to host all these conferences. There's nothing for people to do from the moment they check out of the hotel until the time that they leave. And that's when we think about kind of these ideas of tourism or helping people with activities, 1 day tours. I mean, like massage type things, those types of things. They don't have centers down there, spas, whatever, anything for people who check out of the hotel and only have a certain period of time until they leave. There's no activities for people to actually. There's just nothing to do in Georgetown.
Yeah. Uh, it's, the ideas are easy. The implementation and the execution is hard. And that's how you
For
make
sure.
money in frontier markets. So many of these markets, there's just a lot of money on the sidelines. People just want to spend it. They don't know how to spend it. And you just need to execute and deal with all the nonsense that comes with investing and dealing with operations in a country like this. But this is a great opportunity for people who want to start a new life. Tough environment, boom happening, lots of opportunities. No, this is good. And anything else we should know about
Yeah. One
Guyana?
other thing to understand about what's going on there with the oil boom is that the companies operating offshore, specifically ExxonMobil, part of the arrangement with the government is that they are supposed to reinvest a certain amount of the profits back into the country. And this is not a small number. This is hundreds of millions of dollars per year based upon the percentage of oil that's being pumped, et cetera, et cetera. So the ExxonMobil and the Guyanese government actually have websites to show what they're doing. So you can go out and bid for a lot of these projects. So I think there's a spectrum of how you want to attack this. You can go down there, open a cafe, sell $30 sandwiches and probably crush it, be like a great entrepreneur individual. Or you could attack this on the big side, go try and pull down these contracts. And they're somewhat transparent and they're pretty obvious in the sense like build a road or provide education or whatever it is. So if somebody has a business operating in the US or Europe that already is in a specific sector, it's highly likely there's probably some sort of contract out there that relates to a business you're already in, and you could probably go bid for it. Now, I have not been through that process specifically, but the point is there's hundreds of millions of dollars on the sidelines waiting to fund these projects. And the problem is there's just not enough people to actually fulfill the execution of these projects. Of course, that'll catch up in time. I don't know what the city will Georgetown will look like in 10 years from now, but now is that time. Maybe it's a second wave. The first wave was the land speculation. This next wave is whatever the business development and kind of infrastructure play. Now is the time. And another note I wanted to mention because you asked, how do we get in front of the president? How do we meet with the U.S. Embassy? How do we meet with the CFO of ExxonMobil? We basically worked our way to the top of the food chain in a matter of like 2 trips. Um, there really is not many places in the city where the people doing things are hanging out. So just by brushing shoulders with people that are doing things in this city, you're going to get exposed to all these opportunities. And of course, there's other opportunities we're not even discussing here that we run into. The mining sector is huge, by the way. And one thing we found out is like getting diesel fuel to the middle of the country is a huge logistical nightmare. And they'll pay like $20 a gallon for diesel. But if somebody just goes down there, not even with a plan, they just go hang out with some of the cafes, the restaurants at night, you're going to start to see what's going on. You're going to get connected very quickly and you're going to get more opportunities and rabbit holes to go down than you would even imagine. So I would say this is a prime example, especially for someone who's young and hungry entrepreneur. Get on a plane, go down there, spend 5 days just bouncing around, have fun, but also keep your eyes open to what's happening.
Cool. So essentially now, so the speculation phase is gone. Now it's really about execution, implementation, starting businesses, bidding for contracts. When I hear this and I look at the little neighbor next door, Suriname, which have a bunch of oil discoveries, gas discoveries that are taking place, but they haven't really started extracting any of it. Is this an opportunity? And Suriname, by the way, right next door, Dutch speaking, about 600,000 people.
Absolutely. And we can get into the geopolitics here if we want, but Guyana, let's just say what it is. It's more or less an arm of the US government right now, meaning the US government is completely backing ExxonMobil as the largest oil company in the US. And ExxonMobil will, within the next year or two, be pumping more oil out of Guyana than any other location in the world. So this is an important market for Guyana, or sorry, for ExxonMobil and for Guyana's relations with the US. Reading between the lines here, the U.S. is going to back Guyana no matter what, especially with the recent, Maduro threats that have been along the border in Guyana. Now, Suriname, you would think, oh, this is a very similar situation, but it's different for a lot of ways. It's different language, but it's also different affiliation, as you just said. It's Dutch. It's got the Dutch connection, and so there's different companies playing ball there. It's mostly Total is the oil giant there, but it's still kind of being sussed out. In Guyana and Suriname, there's more and more oil discoveries almost on a weekly basis. It's one of those things where they discover another, the well started producing oil and gas. I think Suriname will have a boom there. It's just going to be a different variety or a different flavor than what's going on in Guyana. And I guess, path to get involved there is going to be a little bit more muddy because of the language differentiation. And Suriname has traditionally been a little bit more of a dictator-esque type country. And then you have French Guiana, which is the third country in a row there. And French Guiana is technically a territory of France itself. So that may be an interesting spot as well eventually. But all these places got a lot of opportunity.
Interesting. So when you mentioned Suriname would have a different flavor, why? Like I know from reading that the profile of the discoveries is more skewed towards gas than oil, which is less profitable. But why would it be different?
So I'll just say it straight up. I mean, I've done business in most Latin American countries, and there's the corruption degree, or whatever you want to call it, meter. And I'm not going to rate Suriname and Guyana specifically because all of Latin America has got a certain degree of or depth of corruption. Suriname specifically has had a pretty rocky reputation with its political environment, specifically with allowing certain people to run for office. There's been assassinations. There's been all kinds of really bad business there. And it's not to give Guyana a complete pass. I would just say that for an individual entrepreneur or a small group going into Suriname expecting to get access to something in a free and fair market, it's probably going to be more difficult than Guyana. It's not to say there's not opportunity there. That's not to say that there aren't one-off opportunities. I would just say that Guyana, with the U.S. backing of wanting a free and fair market there, is probably going to be much more of a level playing field. Whereas Suriname is a little bit more Wild West, and you really got to be connected to who's who. One other thing about Guyana actually has a stock exchange. It's called the GSE, the Guyana Stock Exchange. Very difficult to get information there. I had a friend invest in like 2020 and then sold 2 years later for like a double. He put, X amount of dollars on the top 10 companies, and just by the rising tide, the shares did really well. Whereas Suriname, you're not going to have like a financial market like that, or it's just one level below of what's going on in Guyana right now.
Yeah, there's a stock market in Suriname. I looked into it. It would appear there's essentially no liquidity. I think you have to
Also,
negotiate directly to buy blocks.
one interesting thing I'll share from our experience down there. We had a lot of success working with the U.S. Embassy and getting support on any projects, and they're really really good at helping Americans do business down there. They really want to support anybody. You can reach out to them. They're a great resource. I think the other part that's interesting when I look at Guyana, and after talking with some of the leadership and their vision of where they go or where they want to go, is they have a very clear picture of they've seen the challenges and the successes that happen in the Middle East with oil discovery and then extraction and corruption. And there's some level of transparency around their vision to turn Georgetown into a modern city. They want to invest in healthcare. They want to invest and they want to make this like the healthcare hub of Latin America. And that's why they're building hospitals and investing in all these different things. I think that is the part that makes me excited about Guyana. It's they have the money's there, the money's coming in, and they do have a vision of a future that is substantially more diverse than just oil profits. And we'll see how that goes. But the vision is there, and they're actively, writing out the places that they want to invest and the opportunities and those sorts of things. You can go look at Go Invest, which is one of their investing arms. So that's just my experience, our experience from being in Guyana.
Okay, fascinating. Cool. So yeah, there really is a world of opportunities out there. So gentlemen, how may one follow you?
I think the easiest is just to watch our podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all that. It's called The Adventure Capitalist, and you can go down there to find out how to contact there, or go to adventurecapitalist.com, and that's where all our stuff is.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah, if you're interested in Guyana, going down there, got questions, just shoot us an email to the website, and we'd love to get in touch.
Fantastic. Links will be below. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Make sure to download my free ebook, 12 Mistakes to Avoid When Investing in International Real Estate, which you can find on my website, link below. And feel free to follow me on Instagram @TheWandering Investor. I look forward to hearing from you.